When we think about history, who comes to mind? We often picture the famous figures, right? The kings, the queens, the generals, the geniuses, those with power, status, and worldwide recognition. Our society is built on honoring strength, talent, stunning looks, and all the visible signs of success. We celebrate the powerful and remember the prominent, but have you ever considered that there might be a completely different way that true, lasting change happens? When we look at God's plan, we uncover a truth that flips our human perspective upside down. It is a truth that is both humbling and incredibly encouraging. God often chooses to work through anonymous individuals. He uses the people who are overlooked, underestimated, and sometimes even considered completely unqualified by the world's standards. It's within these humble, faithful hearts, far from the spotlight, that God's greatest purposes are often revealed. The Bible makes this point again and again. It tells us that God's way of seeing people is not our way. We humans tend to judge by what we can see on the outside, outward appearance, social position, or a long list of achievements. But God looks deeper. He looks at the heart. There's no better story to illustrate this than the story of David. Before he became the legendary king of Israel, David was a complete unknown. He was an anonymous shepherd boy, spending his days out in the fields, looking after his father's sheep. He was so far off the radar that when the great prophet Samuel came to his family's home to anoint the next king, his own father didn't even bother to call him in. Why would he? David was the youngest, the smallest, the one busy with the dirty, humble work of a shepherd. In the eyes of his family, and certainly the world, he just wasn't king material. But God's choice of David teaches us a powerful lesson. He is not limited by our human standards or expectations. David's older brothers were there, standing before Samuel. They were tall, strong, and looked like warriors, exactly what you'd expect a king to look like. Yet, one by one, God rejected them. And it's here that God gives Samuel and all of us this incredible insight. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. David's journey wasn't a sudden leap from the pasture to the palace. After Samuel anointed him, something surprising happened. He didn't immediately start his political career. He went right back to his ordinary life, back to the fields and his sheep. He was forging his faith, teaching him patience, and testing his obedience, all far away from any human applause. It came from God, who was always there to deliver him. This deep personal history with God in the secret place was what prepared him for his public destiny. Then comes the moment that changes everything. The giant Goliath appears, taunting the entire army of Israel. The soldiers, including King Saul himself, are paralyzed with fear. From a human perspective, Goliath represented overwhelming power, years of combat experience, and sheer brute force. He was the ultimate champion, and who steps forward to face him? Not a seasoned general, not a decorated warrior, but David, that same anonymous shepherd boy. He shows up without armor, without sophisticated weapons, and he's even scorned by his own brothers, who think he's just there to watch the show. But this overlooked young man was the only one willing to fight. Why? Because he saw the situation differently. He wasn't looking through the lens of human fear. He was looking through the lens of faith, forged in the lonely fields with God. He knew from experience that God was bigger than any giant. David's confidence wasn't in his own ability. He boldly declared to Goliath, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." He was relying on the power of the unseen God he had come to know so intimately. But his victory that day wasn't just a military triumph. It was a stunning demonstration that God's power is made perfect in what the world considers weakness. The anonymous shepherd, armed with nothing but a sling and a rock-solid faith, did what an entire army couldn't. This pattern isn't unique to David. The Bible is filled with stories of anonymous heroes. Think of the unnamed widow who gave her last 2 coins an act. Jesus said was greater than all the large sums given by the rich, or the little boy whose small lunch of 5 loaves and 2 fish was used to feed 5,000 people. Or the countless nameless believers in the early church who spread the gospel not through power or fame, but through quiet faithfulness and courageous love in their local communities. God's kingdom advances on the faithfulness of the anonymous. It's built on the prayers of people no one has ever heard of. The quiet service of those who never seek recognition, and the steadfast love of believers who simply live out their faith day by day. We may never know their names, but God does, and their impact is eternal. So, what does this mean for us today, in a world that is obsessed with follower counts, likes, and public recognition? It's a powerful invitation to redefine success. Maybe true impact isn't about building a big platform, but about cultivating a faithful heart in the place God has put you right now. Whether you're a student, a parent, an employee, a caregiver, you're anonymous, faithful work matters to God. The character you build in secret, the integrity you maintain when no one is watching, the prayers you whisper in private, these are the things that have true weight in God's kingdom. You might feel overlooked sometimes. You might feel like what you're doing is small or insignificant. But remember David in the field. Remember the widow with her 2 coins. God sees your heart. He is using your quiet faithfulness to accomplish His great purposes, often in ways you may never see this side of eternity. Don't despise the day of small beginnings. Don't underestimate the power of a life lived faithfully before an audience of one, because it is in the hands of the anonymous that God often places the keys to his kingdom. Thanks so much for watching. If this message resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more content like this. We'd love to have you as part of our community. See you in the next video. We all know the famous tale, David versus Goliath, the small boy with a slingshot against the giant warrior. It's a classic underdog story. It was the result of a lifetime of quiet faithfulness, a deep trust in God that was built long before anyone knew his name. Before David faced Goliath in front of two armies, he faced lions and bears in the lonely wilderness to protect his father's sheep. Alone, in the dark, with no one watching, no one to applaud him, he was building his strength, his courage, and most importantly, his faith. He triumphed in the darkness long before he triumphed in the light. He was recognized by God long before he was ever recognized by people. This tells us something profound about how God works. In his grand design, the preparation that happens inside of us, in secret, is far more important than any outward recognition or applause. The world might measure success by followers, fame, and fortune. But God measures it by the quiet development of our character and the depth of our trust in him. And this theme of the anonymous hero isn't unique to David. If you look throughout the Bible, you'll see it's a pattern. God consistently chooses ordinary, seemingly insignificant people to carry out his most extraordinary plans. Think about Moses. Before he led a nation out of slavery and parted the Red Sea, he was a fugitive, a shepherd living in the middle of nowhere for 40 years. He had a past he was running from and a stutter that made him feel completely unqualified to be a spokesman. By worldly standards, he was forgotten, his best years behind him. Yet it was in that season of anonymity that God was preparing him for one of the greatest leadership roles in history. Or consider Gideon. When God called him to save Israel from its enemies, what was Gideon's reaction? He said, "But Lord, how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest, and I am the least in my family." He saw himself as the bottom of the barrel, a total nobody. He was hiding, trying to stay off the radar. But God didn't see a weakling. He saw a mighty warrior. God chose the person who felt the most insignificant to display his incredible strength. And then there's Mary, the mother of Jesus. She wasn't a princess or a prophetess. She was a young, humble girl from a small, overlooked town called Nazareth. You might feel like your efforts are unseen and that you're not making a big difference. He sees you. He sees every quiet act of service, every prayer whispered in the dark, every tear you cry when no one is watching. He sees every time you choose kindness over anger, integrity over a shortcut, and faith over fear. These small, unseen acts of faithfulness are not in vain. In God's economy, they are the very things that hold immense, eternal value. A cup of cold water given in His name, a word of encouragement to a struggling friend, a patient response to a difficult child. These are the building blocks of God's kingdom. Your quiet life of faith is like David's time in the wilderness. It's a training ground. It's where your character is being forged and your trust is being deepened. This message of the anonymous in God's plan is a source of incredible hope and comfort. It liberates us from the pressure to be famous, to be perfect, or to achieve some worldly definition of success. It reminds us that our value isn't determined by how many people know our name, but by the one who knows our heart. God isn't looking for superstars. He's not looking for perfect people with perfect lives. Continue to be faithful in the small things, in the dark, because that is where true victory is won. That is where heroes are made. Thank you so much for watching. If this message resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more content like this. We'd love to have you as part of our community. God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.